Hi there, I hope this, I was going to say email, I hope this lecture finds you well this week. And basically I'm just going to get straight into it. So today we're going to look at, we've looked at the sociological frameworks in the first few lectures that I did with you, but now we're actually going to look at the particular models that have been set out by Hurley and Tracy, which help us understand a little bit better youth work specifically, okay? And these models draw from the broader sociological models that I was talking about with you in those first few weeks. So hopefully this will make this lecture and the next lecture in this session will make a little bit more sense of what we were doing in those first couple of lectures in regard to applying those models, those sociological models and theories specifically to youth work practice in order to understand youth work practice, why we do it and how we do it, okay, and what influences this externally and internally. So I just want to start off by asking the question, what's the purpose of youth work? And this is to get you thinking about what theoretical models we use. So why does youth work happen? But why does it happen from different perspectives and different points of view? So as a youth worker, why would you do youth work? Why would you work with young people, okay? So have a think of that. About that, just yourself. Why do you do youth work? Why do you work with young people? Why would a youth worker work with young people? What could some of the reasons be, okay? So you could be saying to educate them, to give them a space for personal self-development, to build up social skills. So those are some of the reasons why you would work with young people. Also, there could be that point of view in regard to working with them because they're in a disadvantaged area and you want to try and put them in spaces where they are able to see other sides to life and what's happening in life other than just what happens within their own maybe estate or community. So why would a community want youth work to happen? And back to that reason that I just pointed to. So community might want to see youth work happen, and youth workers within their community, again for the good of the community, to build the community, to build good things happening in the community. So have a think. And then why would the state? So we talked about a little bit in the past few lectures about why different governments in different states, particularly Greece, pushed for to align themselves and build relationships with youth groups and young people. So there was particular reasons why they wanted to do that and why they pushed that, okay? So it's just to start off by having a think about why, what the purpose of youth work is from these three different perspectives, okay? And then hopefully by thinking about this might make a little bit more sense when we look at the four models that are set out by Hurley and Tracy. So keep in mind, so I'm just drawing on these very quickly just to remind you, and you can go back to your initial lectures as well to have a look at these. But when we were talking about the broader sociological models and theories, we were talking about functionalism, conflict theory, symbolic interactionism, feminist theory, radical humanism, and critical social theories. So just a really brief, quick reminder that functionalism looks at society from the point of view that we have to have certain things in place in order for society to function. Particular institutions, particular ways are set up in society in order for it to function. If we didn't have these particular things or particular ways or particular values, particular ideas in society, people didn't have particular roles, society wouldn't function. So that is the perspective, the broad perspective of a functionalist. Conflict theory then looks at society from the perspective that resources are unequally distributed and that there's an unequal distribution of resources and power within society. Symbolic interactionism looks at how people and things in society interact with each other, creating values, creating views, creating standpoints on particular things. Feminist theory takes the perspective of looking at gender and looking at women's place in society and how that is constructed in society. and plays out in society. Radical humanist is taking that humanist perspective and looking at looking at human values and humanist ideas, and how can we make a better society? How can we create a better society by changing things, everything from our beliefs, our cultures, questioning them to a whole change in setup of how these are managed. And then critical social theory looks at critiquing and asking questions about the society that we live in. I hope that made a little bit more sense, and I hope the readings that you've done has also cleared up some of those ideas. That's a really brief snapshot of those, so the readings will give you a bit more of an idea if you've done them so far. Models of provision then in youth work. Okay, so we have mainline provision, so hopefully these are familiar, and they will be familiar even from the lectures that I've just done and the readings that you have done. So you have mainline provision in youth work. So mainline provision is universal. So this type of youth work is universal, it's open to all. And what this looks like is the setting up of youth clubs, of scouts, guides, youth information services, summer projects, exchange programs, and youth cafes. So all of these models of services, I suppose, or spaces for young people, are for all young people. So they're set up so all young people, with the agenda of all young people being able to access them. Okay, so in Ireland, then just to go back to Ireland and just to draw from one of the quotes that I pulled out of Devlin's one of Devlin's readings. A club is what happens when a group of young men actuated by Christian charity. So this is drawn back from the origins of youth work. Actuated by Christian charity and more or less of middle class, and a group of boys of the slums form individual and collective friendships. A club is not a building or anything else on the material plane. It is like a bridge across the great gulf of class, environment, age that exists between the two groups. And I think this is really nice. It is a really nice quote in regard to, the purpose of youth clubs. Youth clubs are there for all young people to mix, to talk, to socialise, to build all these skills. But there's no barriers saying that some young people can access them and others can't, which is what we see happens in these next spaces for youth work. So these next spaces emphasise special targeted services, at-risk groups, outreach, detached work, special projects for disadvantaged young people, community-based drugs initiatives, and crime diversion projects. Okay, and finally, sorry, I had another one there. So going to this slide really quickly, right? So youth health work is another particular targeted type of youth work as well, often. So I suppose what I want to say, the key question that I want to pose there: when is it youth work, and when is it working with young people? Okay, so what I've put up so far is there's different spaces where young people can access. Some of those spaces all young people can go to, and then other spaces some young people can go to. And why is this? So why do we have specialised targeted projects? And why do we have universal spaces that are universal, which all young people can go to? Okay, and we saw the progression when we looked at Greece, Ireland, and England in particular, that youth work progressed to having these more targeted. The more youth projects got funded, the more they were specialised, and they had this deficit-based approach where it was for the young people who needed it. Young people were labelled more so, and these specific projects were for them. Now there's pros and cons to this happening, but I suppose what I want to do by showing you these 4 theoretical models, specific approaches to youth work, is to try and unpack why there's funding for targeted projects and why there's funding for projects that are universal, and more often than not there's more funding applied to the Garda Diversion, the justice projects, the mental health projects, the drugs projects, okay? And what are the ways we can see this? By using theoretical models created by Tracy and Hurley, how can we unpack these and make a bit more sense of them? And also, this question of when is it youth work versus working with young people, okay? So how can we pinpoint that actual theoretical approaches to youth work are being used, or when is it just a space for young people to come and hang out, okay? And these models will give you a bit more of a sense of that, okay? So Tracy says that youth work is increasingly conducted at the interface and within other domains. Youth justice work, such as youth justice work, youth diversion projects, youth education work, homework support clubs, mentoring and guidance services, early school leaving projects, and youth social work, so mediation services, youth homelessness projects. And I suppose there's often a case as well that I'm aware of, particularly in Ireland anyway, where we are, as youth workers, everything to everybody. So how can we explain what we're doing and how we're doing it? And one way of doing that, and I'll speak about that as well in the next lecture, and how we do that is by drawing from these models these 4 models by Hurley and Tracy, in order to make sense of the work we're doing and why we're doing it, in order to articulate it to those outside of youth work, okay? So like Spence says, an important task of building the discursive field of youth work and to communicate its meanings is to engage with the different theoretical dimensions of these related to educational approaches. So I hope after this lecture and the one that follows, you'll have a bit more sense of the type of youth work you're doing, of why you're doing it, why you're approaching youth work, and also that broader framework surrounding you. So what are some of the agendas behind the funding for that youth work, and what is it possibly asking you to do with young people? Okay, so there's finally getting to these models. There's 4 models, okay, of that can be applied to youth work in order for us to understand it better and to highlight what we're doing in our practice and why we practice the way we do. Okay, and these 4 models are set out in the reading that I've given to you by Hurley and Tracy. So these are character building, personal development, critical social education, and radical social change. And like that, these models of youth work can be used in the examination of youth work practice regarding its outcomes in society. So you might already be aware of some of these. So the character building and the personal development, so just give a quick synopsis, and I'll go into them in more detail in the next lecture. Character building and personal development are models that are and can still be used, but are often applied to an analysis of youth work that was happening when I was telling you about back in the history of Irish youth work, English youth work, and Greek youth work. So they're models that make sense of the type of work that was being done in regard to trying to build young people's self-esteem around that personal development, that character building. So building character in order to look at the type of contribution and participation they can make as citizens. So that was character building. Personal development was building their self-esteem, building their communication skills, giving them space to explore and find out more about themselves. The critical social education opens up young people's thinking outside of themselves and outside of them just being good citizens. So it creates a space, like you've already learned from critical social education, it creates a space for them to ask questions about the society and the spaces that they live in, and ask why. And radical social change encourages and works with young people in order to critique society and look for ways of changing that society. So we'll have a look at them in more depth in the next session. Thanks. And please do the quiz after this before you go on to that next lecture. Thank you.